All signs pointing to a record-breaking year for tech IPOs as more Silicon Valley unicorns like Uber and Slack look to cash in with investors. Bradley Tusk is founder and CEO at Tusk Ventures. He joins us now to discuss what we can expect for the rest of the year. And we should also point out he was an early advisor to Uber between 2011 and 2015. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So it's certainly been a very dizzying first half so far. A bit of a mixed picture, you could argue, with some of these tech companies. Help me understand how you see things.
I think you can kind of draw a pretty clear line, which is Uber and Lyft are not doing well. Everyone else is doing reasonably well to very well, depending on who you are. And one of the lessons, I think, is Uber and Lyft just waited too long to go public. Part of the magic of an IPO and the pop and everything else is that you're buying into the potential of what can be, right? And when you are private for 8-10 years and you raise an Uber's case, literally 11 figures or something like that of private money, there's no mystery anymore, right? And one of the things that Uber, I think, really messed up on is rather than selling themselves as this vision for what can be in the future, it's like, hey, we calmed a lot of things down. We got control of our company, which is great. But when you're buying into a company that's losing $1 billion a quarter, you have to believe into the future. There's no reason to believe in the present. And I think the companies that are doing well either still have a lot of runway left or they're selling a vision of innovation. And companies like Uber and Lyft seem to think that resting on their laurels would be enough, and it's clearly not.
Well, having said that, I wonder what the conversation is on the private side of things, because I know through Tusk Ventures, you obviously invest in some private companies.
Sure.
Is the conversation about how much longer, maybe tech companies need to come to market a little sooner? Because the reality is there's still a lot of money on the private side. For
sure. So on one hand, you can keep raising money almost indefinitely on the private side. We invest in seed and Series A, but you'll see these kind of really big funds, the Fidelities of the world, show up with $2 billion at a Series J or something like that, in which case, sure, why go public? But I think the downside is when you eventually do go public, and keep in mind, it's not just the board and the investors, but also everyone who works there and the CEO. Everyone's relying on the IPO to eventually be able to cash out and get their money. If you wait too long, there's a point where you miss it. So, I remember thinking, and I'd kind of been working with Uber for a long time, 2015, 2016, talking to Travis and saying, isn't now the time? And he had lots of good reasons as to why it wasn't. But I still think that had we gone public then, we probably would have been at a higher valuation than we ended up doing this year.
Do you think Uber has also messed up by not classifying its workers as employees?
No. I think that is an issue where both sides are taking an extreme position and the reality somewhere in between. If you are, say, a New York City Uber driver and you're working 70 hours a week, you are clearly a full-time employee. To pretend otherwise is ridiculous. If you are a college student or a senior citizen and you're driving 12 hours a week, you're clearly not a full-time employee. And labor's taking one side of it, the gig economy companies are taking another, and the reality is the truth is somewhere in between.
Where does it shake out, though?
I think it's going to shake out state by state, right? So federally, you saw the Department of Labor recently say that a gig economy worker is an independent contractor. States like Florida and Texas have passed laws also clarifying that in statute. And then other states like California clearly are going the other direction and working on legislation that would say that people are full-time employees. So like everything, it comes down to local politics.
It's a good segue. I was going to ask you about your politics.
Sure.
Given your background, obviously you worked with Mayor Bloomberg at the time, and you were also communications director with Chuck Schumer. Looking at where the field is right now, how do you see this shaking down? We got the first look at all the candidates. It is still a very crowded field.
So here's what I know. One, and keep in mind, I'm an independent, so I kind of disdain both parties equally. So the Democrats are historically bad as a party at picking nominees. Gore shouldn't have lost to Bush. Kerry shouldn't have lost to Bush. Hillary shouldn't have lost to Trump. Those are all winnable elections, except for the fact that Democrats nominated the one person in each case who couldn't win that election. If you believe in free markets, which anyone watching this obviously does, I would hope that we let the primary serve as an open marketplace. Ideally, all 24 candidates stay in for as long as they possibly can. And rather than the party or the media trying to put their finger on the scale and say, okay, it's Harris, it's Warren, it's Buttigieg, or whoever the flavor of the moment is, let the market work the way it's supposed to. Let the voters decide. Because if you do that, whoever emerges will almost definitionally be the strongest candidate to take on Trump. I could still sit here right now and tell you why Biden's the best candidate to win, or Harris, or Warren, or Sanders. We can all make plausible arguments about any of them. But the reality is, we don't know. We have no idea where the economy is going to be or what the voters are going to want in 15 months.
Very quickly, though, if you look at where things are right now, you don't have to pick a specific candidate, but I wonder where the message is, because you've got those like Joe Biden who are trying to find the center her.
Yep.
And then those like Elizabeth Warren, she's getting a lot of traction for really talking about a bigger shakeup.
I think the lesson really is you have to be who you are. Look, I'm not a Trump fan, but I acknowledge that he is authentic, right? Elizabeth Warren truly believes the things she's saying, and you know that. The same thing with Bernie Sanders. I don't like Sanders' policies at all, but I believe he believes them. Buttigieg feels generally genuine, right? And the candidates that feel manufactured because they're trying to read the polls and come up with the perfect statement that doesn't offend anybody, whether that was Hillary or Biden right now, they never win.
You're still really plugged into this stuff, Brett.
Yeah, well, it's hard not to follow it. It's pretty fun.